World of Warcraft, otherwise known as WoW, is one of, if not the biggest MMO in the world. I've been wanting to see what this game has to offer. While I've had a dip into the series every now and then, it was never anything substantial enough to call myself a player of the game. My goal with this is to document my journey and talk about my experience through the World of Warcraft. See what I did there? When I said that WoW was big, I meant it. A bigger challenge than taking on all 9 of its expansions would be trying to find people that have never heard the word Warcraft. This is a game that even your Facebook grandmother has heard of, and if you try to say no to that, I don't believe you. This game has been going for about 20 years now. That's basically unheard of in today's gaming landscape. WoW has had millions of players from all walks of life, assuming they were wealthy enough to afford a subscription fee. With 20 years under the hood, it's got all sorts of players. For my various attempts of trying the game and getting too busy to continue for a while, I know that retail WoW is not the way to go when you want to experience what the game has to offer from beginning to end. The reason for this is that Blizzard pretty much pushes every new character toward the new expansion, whether they want to or not. In Blizzard's defense here, there are 9 expansions with another coming this year. That is a lot to ask a new player to play through just to catch up with their friends who somehow convinced them to try. Leveling in retail is extremely fast. If you wanted to, you could be level ready for the current expansion Dragonflight in under a day. That's 60 levels. Not only does that push the player forward at breakneck pace, but you're often so overleveled that previous expansions aren't worth staying in for more than a few hours. Seriously, if you're just 5 levels higher than an enemy, you basically turn into a raid boss for that zone. 4 levels? Pfft, you can have a challenge if you pull too much. But once you hit that fabled 5th level, you might as well be fighting ants. So because retail isn't great for this style of video, I made the decision to start with Classic and work my way forward. Classic is done in a more traditional style. Leveling takes much longer, you can't just fly everywhere, and you can progress each batch of content from vanilla through Wrath of the Lich King in a more natural way. The way I like to enjoy games. Hi there, my name is MegaMadVlad. I've played a few MMOs in my time, such as Final Fantasy XIV, Elder Scrolls Online, and Guild Wars 2. Even have a series for that one. Welcome to the first World of Warcraft video in my journey and experience to see how the game is. To see what fun I can have with the older style of MMO it is. We're going through starting with Classic Vanilla and working our way through the expansions in order. This will be in Wrath Classic, so I have Dungeon Finder to avoid social interactivity with others in the wild. With that out of the way, let's hop right into things. This is World of Wowcraft. We begin our journey at the character creator. With so many races and classes to choose from, I decided to follow my lineage of being a local internet troll. With hair like that, I'm sure to be noticed by everybody. As for my class, I'll be going as a bowl of shaman noodles. Now that the character is made, it's time we come up with a name that'll bring fear to all my enemies. And thus begins our journey. The Legend of Glorbo! The Legend of Frank! The Legend of Vladithar? Yes! First try! As I open my eyes, I'm greeted with the troll introductory camera movement cutscene. I also find myself in a place that looks to be far more orange than the sun itself. A place called the Valley of Trials. It's a huge world out there, one full of quests to do, enemies to fight, and locations to discover. What is Vladithar to do first on his legendary quest? That's right. Questing for cactus. Cactus. In another quest, Vladithar is tasked with taking out some of the local boars. It's up to me to throw down the gauntlet and show them who's boss. Coming up to a nearby tree, Vladithar spots a collapsed troll. Turns out he was poisoned by a very dangerous scorpion. He begs us to avenge him, and avenge him we shall. Found you. Now hold still while Oh, you died. Mission accomplished. Consider yourself avenged. I'm still alive, you know. After completing some more quests, we find someone who gives us a questionable drink and tells us to take a swig of it at a very specific spot. So naturally we trust him and find the place. Now to take a sip. Whoa, dude. Talk to some giant rock dude, and now we have an earth stick made out of wood. With that in my arsenal, I feel like it's the perfect time to ditch this orange creamsicle stand and venture forth. Look out, Azeroth. Here comes Vladithar. Heading out of the Valley of Trials, we come across an orc who wants us to go north to Razor Hill because he's lazy. But I already got a quest to go south, so we head on down to Sen'jin village instead. The questing in Sen'jin led me to combating centaurs, cats, seafood, raptors, and some trolls on an island. While the visit to the islands was nice, it's clear that the locals hate me for putting their loved ones 6 feet under, so it's time I leave. We now head north to Razor Hill. This place is like an actual settlement. It's got walls, buildings, leadership, and a keep filled with enemy humans just spitting distance away. Naturally, we get a quest to take out the main guy in that keep, so take him out we shall, and not in the dinner and movie kind of way. Oh, he dropped a key. I wonder what it goes to. Found a chest. Let's see what's inside. Are these alliance plans? That guy over at Razor Hill should see this. Now, I could run down all the stairs again, or I could just hop off this wall here. Ouch. Handing the plans over to the quest giver, we're now tasked with bringing it over to the head honcho himself, Thrall, the war chief of the Horde. Heading north again, we reach Orgrimmar, the nearly safe domain of the Horde itself. Not like a future expansion has a raid or anything, right? Coming up to Thrall, it's time to show him the plans.
All members of the Horde are equal in my eyes, adventurer!
Oh my god, I can't get over how the add-on makes him say it that way. Thrall's main concern is a group called the Burning Blade. He already knows they've infiltrated the Horde itself, and even knows one of the leaders. He wants us to get some sort of lieutenant's insignia in a location that just so happens to line up perfectly with a quest I grabbed earlier. Hunting down a goblin named Fizzle. He appears to be in a ravine. The poor sap. He has no idea just how powerful I truly am. He also doesn't know I exist. Yeah. Heading into the ravine, we finally come across Fizzle himself, and it happened. It was a tough fight, but my hardcore character died. It's a good thing I'm not playing hardcore. Vladithar runs back to get some payback and finally take down Fizzle for good. Hold still, Fizzle. You stand no chance. Actually, he almost killed me. But in the end, I was victorious. And I happened to find the lieutenant's insignia in the same location. Go figure. Making our way back to Thrall, I realized that I actually forgot to set Orgrimmar as my home. Whoopsie. We show Thrall the insignia, and he then tasks us with going undercover as a Burning Blade lieutenant. Clearly, I've gone and leveled up from being just a plain Jane adventurer all the way to a super spy. Found the leader of the Burning Blade in a very dreary looking place in Orgrimmar. I hope I can make him believe I'm one of his lieutenants. Oh, he instantly trusts me because of the insignia. I mean, all according to plan. This Niru guy, who really loves demons, just gave me a quest to go destroy a demon seed. Seems kind of counterproductive there. So we head west into a place called the Barrens. We're given a special stone with a time limit to destroy the demon seed with, so off we run to Dead Mist Peak. I have arrived at Dead Mist Peak, and holy hell does it look like hell up here. Ah, there's the demon seed. Now to get to work. Now that I've successfully completed the mission and escaped, I guess I'll quest around here for a bit and level more. Got a quest to take on some Quillboar and died for the second time this playthrough. I'm beginning to think that WoW wasn't originally designed with hardcore in mind back in 2004. After running back to my body and finishing up the quest, I decided to finally go after getting my fire totem. Grab the quest, find a hidden pathway, follow said pathway, and find a lone troll NPC near the peak. He gives me 2 quests to complete first, so I do the one that was closer first. And then I have to find an area that has Burning Blade agents on the eastern side of Durotar. I follow the quest marker thanks to Questy, only to find nothing but harpies. So I figured, let's go to the other side of the mountain wall. I get there and sure enough, there's the Burning Blade. It was time to get to work. Only there was a second player there on the same quest as myself. We team up, he got the drop really early on, but it took a while for me to get it. But get it I did. We then split up after leaving the cave. Thank you, mystery player. I then run back to the NPC troll to hand in the quest, and he gives me another questionable drink. Run to the peak and spot the same player there. Take a swig of the drink, and we both nuked the enemy together. What a nice player. Got my fire stick. Did you say more DPS? After that, I went back to the Barrens, came across a location called the Crossroads, where I nabbed up my first flight path since Orgrimmar. It's all coming together. Did some more questing and decided it was time to finally enter the very first Horde dungeon in the game, the fabled Ragefire Chasm. I've had some quests involved with it, just sitting there for a bit now. My good friend Caitlin came in to help out with the queue times. What a giga chad. We queue up next to the dungeon and wait. I was actually unaware that Wrath Classic Dungeon Finder was sophisticated enough to just teleport you into the dungeon, which effectively makes the meeting stones useless through that system. We finally get into the dungeon, and it's like being in the middle of a volcano. But this was it. My first classic party encounter. We were going through, cleaving down all who stood before us. None stood a chance. We reached the first dungeon boss, and he fell like all the rest. And then everyone just dipped. How nice of them. Still having more bosses I needed to beat, I would try to run the dungeon yet again. But alas, it was late at night, so I would have to wait for another day. Wake up the next day, hop onto the game, queue up without my friend this time, and we're in. New team, new day, same dungeon. Going through and taking on hordes of enemies. Then our Tauren teammate goes off on his own and pieces out. A bit awkward, but we persist with just the 4 of us. The actual first boss goes down. Oh man, I actually had no idea he was there. Would have been a dead giveaway for the previous team leaving. We reach the same boss as yesterday, and he falls like all the rest. Things are going pretty smoothly for being down 1 player the entire time. We continue on, and eventually it happens. We beat the dungeon. I could finally hand in those quests. I was even given a quest that came all the way from Thunderbluff, a place I haven't been to yet. With all of that handed in, where will the questline go from here? How will Thrall and the Burning Blades feud go from here? Oh, it just kind of ends. Is there something at a later level? All right then, I guess I'll continue on. My friend joins me again as we work towards grabbing up quests for our second dungeon, the Wailing Caverns. Heading west back into the Barrens, we visit a few places there such as Ratchet and Camp Tarajo. But eventually we find all that we need and queue up for the new dungeon. We get in and are greeted with a Tauren at the entrance. We move further in and begin our hunt for all the bosses. Enemy mobs to the left, enemy mobs to the right. Exactly the dungeon experience I remember from Ragefire Chasm. Some enemies kept putting us to sleep, and eventually I figured out that my tremor totem was perfect to avoid something like that. A couple dots here, a totem there, and eventually we're face to face with one big boss. We take him out just as quickly as we found him, but the dungeon wasn't finished yet. Our teammates didn't just dip out on us, so I followed them. They walked all the way back to the Tauren at the entrance, interacted with him, and he started walking. Oh no, it's an escort quest. Thankfully, it was actually quite fast. Just a few spots that had a wave of enemies, followed by the final room. In this very room, he starts performing some sort of ritual on a body, and we have to protect him. Enemies start invading from the water in every direction. I placed down all of my totems to buff everyone up. It was anarchy. And then, the mother of all Murlocs rose up from the water's depths. He was the biggest Murloc I've ever seen. We promptly put him 6 feet under and the dungeon was done. Sweet. 2 dungeons down and a lot of levels to get. Caitlin and I go our separate ways for now. It's time to explore. Staying in the Barrens, I have a quest that requires me to find someone. I find a dead body, and for some reason the add-on makes them speak to me, making this one strange obituary.
The body is that of a female orc warrior. It is clear that she died in battle.
Eventually, I came across the worst enemy you could ever find. Lag. Turns out my internet stopped working, so when I logged back in, I was dead again. A hardcore raider, I am not. I then decided to move on from the Barrens. Heading west, I found myself in a place called Stone Talon Mountains. A new zone means new quests to do and levels to gain. As I was going through the zone, I noticed a single quest all by its lonesome. I traveled over to it to spot enemies all around it. Turns out it was an escort quest all along. The only time they ever decided to run was to charge at an enemy and then back to their original position. What is this madness? Thankfully, I finished it without too much trouble, so I continued on. One of the quests I grabbed earlier wanted me to hunt down some lumberjacks or something. After accomplishing that, I noticed yet another quest all by itself. It's a cave full of enemies. Another player happened to wander in as well. I figured I would take advantage of that and head inside. Turns out it was a mistake! I really have to remember that potions are a thing. Also, one of the things I was trying to avoid ended up happening anyway. I had a bunch of quests to hand in that were all over the place, so I took some time to bounce around everywhere quickly to get all of that XP. By the time I was finished, I was in Ratchet, and I got a quest to go take on a human fort. I figured, why not? It's good XP. So I traveled south toward it, past a bunch of pirates, and I arrived at my destination. I was clearly overleveled for this area. The enemies didn't stand a chance. A lone quest. in the middle of an enemy fort. I can only imagine what kind of escort quest this might be. It was an escort quest after all, so I ran ahead, trying to take out as many enemies as I could before he got to them. But boy, did he just run up to everything that moved. Thankfully, I finished it up, got him all the way back to Ratchet. It was over. I also happened to find the starting quest for the water totem. Little did I know what this meant at the time. Little did I know. I end up back in the Barrens for the quest. Grab some water at the base of the hill and bring it back. Next step is all the way across the world. I literally have to go to a completely different continent for some more water. Since I have the coin for it now, I might as well make things a bit easier for myself. I head back to Sen'jin village to get my first mount in the game. And then I was Speedy Boy. Now that going places is 60% faster, I know what I need to do now. So back in Stone Talon, I found an area with more ads than Twitch. All right, I'll stop putting it off. I took the Zeppelin from Durotar over to the Eastern Kingdoms. The water was south of my location, so I went south and found Undercity. After that, I turned right and headed south again. Turns out that was a huge mistake. I found myself in Western Plaguelands, and the enemies had skulls instead of levels. I ran out of there faster than Ezra Miller deciding to do a crime. I then went west in search of a safer pathway to my destination. Sure enough, I found my way through and got the water out of a well. Mission accomplished. Now it's back to the Barrens I go. I hand in the new water skin, and as expected, there's the third one. North in a zone called Ashenvale. At least it's in Kalimdor this time. Now, Caitlin and I had plans for Ashenvale later, so I held off running there since they weren't available yet. So I decided to see what was south of the Barrens. 1,000 needles? That sounds just shy of the amount of needles your doctor is going to give you your next appointment. Lots of huge rock towers, and enemies my level or higher. This was going to be one tough cookie. After doing some quests, one involving a remote control robot, I was given a quest to hunt down a specific Tauren enemy. It took a while, but I eventually found the area to head up to their camp. Another player had the same idea. We teamed up and took down anything that got in our way. We found the Tauren in question, put him in the dirt, and ended our temporary friendship after a long escort mission. After that, Caitlin popped on. Heading north of the Barrens, we reached the fabled Ashenvale. It was teeming with life, much more than all the previous locations I've been to. I mean, one of those zones was literally called the Barrens after all. While we were in Ashenvale, we were collecting up all the quests that had to do with the zone's dungeon. We also stopped for me to get the third water sample. With that in tow, it was time to travel back and hand it in. Flying over one of the biggest enemies I've ever seen, I went straight back to the Barrens again. Handed in the final water skin, only to find out there's another quest giver entirely. So I went south of Ratchet and found them. They tasked me with fighting some corrupted water spirit in the Eastern Kingdoms. Why is everything everywhere else? I start making the run to Eastern Kingdoms. I missed my flight in Durotar. Finally making it to the Eastern Kingdoms, I raced to the location on my map, doing some hardcore parkour through the mountains, drinking the questionable drink, and putting the smackdown on some water. It was finished. Time to head back. I missed my flight to Durotar. This is going to happen a lot, isn't it? Finally made my way back to Ratchet, handed in the quest, and it was finally over. I had my water stick. After all of that was finished, it was time I took out my frustrations on some unsuspecting furry beast things. After taking down like 100 of them or something, I'm feeling better. Back in Ashenvale, we collect up the rest of the dungeon quests and prepare to start dungeoning. We queued up, and it was time to head into our third dungeon, Blackfathom Deeps. Enemies galore. I'm using all of my totems a lot, putting some dots on enemies, straight up buffing the party, and I'm in a drinking contest with the priest. I guess this is the classic dungeon experience. Bosses are just bigger enemies with more health. Just takes a bit of whittling down their bar to win. We find ourselves in a room with a statue. All 5 of us prepare. Wave after wave of enemies rush us down. I make sure to place down all 3 of my totems. 1 for healing, 1 for buffing, and 1 for DPS. The doors in the back open up and we rush through. After surviving that gauntlet, there's surely nothing that can stop us now. A short hallway with a few ads here and there, and then we find the final boss, Akumai. After an easy fought battle, we won. It was time to head out and hand in some quests. After handing in the quests, I finally leveled up to 30, the halfway point. And that's the summary for my journey up to the point of writing this video. While I'm numerically halfway to 60, based on how drastically the time between each level gets, I'm probably closer to about a third of the way to 60, in terms of time to reach it anyway. And while leveling in Classic takes so much longer to do than current games do, there's something different here. There's just something about having a longer journey to max level that just feels good. Whether or not that sticks with alts is up for debate. But as things stand now, this is the longest I've spent growing a single character in World of Warcraft. It feels good. It's like that hit of dopamine you get each level has more meaning to it. This journey feels a lot more earned than hopping into retail with a new character and being called champion immediately. This journey to 60 for the base game has been interesting to say the least. I keep bringing up level 60 specifically because it's what I'm going to consider as the hard stopping point for vanilla and when I head into the Burning Crusade. I also liked the couple of times I was running around questing and ended up partying up with a random player. Even if our quests didn't align 100%, it was easier to share the loot rather than fighting over every ad. The dungeon experience is something that was different for sure. I'm used to dungeons having a lot of chaos, boss mechanics, and faster pacing. While that experience in dungeons is very fun, I will say the slower approach of Classic's dungeons feels more natural with the rest of the world, mainly being filled with lots of enemies, bosses are health sponges, and nobody talks at all. As for the class system in Classic, rather than doing quests or just regular leveling up to get new skills, you have to pay to learn them from a class trainer. This is the absolute biggest source of me going broke in the game so far. Absolutely nothing is even close to costing as much. So I guess that training skills approach was made to be a bit more realistic than just getting to level 27 and all of a sudden knowing the skill Godslayer 9000 or something. Funnily enough though, is you just pay and the knowledge is in your character's head. So take that as you will. I ended this section of my journey with still missing a lot of gear. I have no trinkets, no helmet, and no necklace. Outside of purchasing the gear through the auction house and just rolling for it in dungeons, these things haven't dropped for me at all. Still a long way to 60 though, so plenty of time to come across them. It's been an overall fun and interesting experience so far. There's a lot of differences between classic and modern games where the design philosophy is concerned, but in the end, I can say I'm looking forward to continuing on. It's a long journey ahead. So with that said, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you liked the video, and if you want to join in, I have a Discord server in the description below. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great day. Adios.